Hope you don't mind if I take a selfie with you. Is that okay? Okay. Everybody smile. Sit down over there in the back. Okay, there we are. That's it. Everybody, cheese. All right, I'll post that on Twitter today. Those of you that don't know what Twitter is, going to miss a really good picture. All right, so going to get started here. So thank you for joining me this morning. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful conference and a great opportunity to speak to you. So I actually became interested in disasters relatively abruptly at 3:16 p.m. on May 29th, 1982. And that's when an F4 tornado actually struck my community in Marion, Illinois. 30,000 people in the community, killed 10, injured over 200, and put 1,500 of us homeless, including myself and my family as well. But my story doesn't begin in Marion, Illinois in 1982. It actually begins 15 years earlier when I was 7 years old, growing up in the Midwest. And I may be dating myself, and maybe some of you as well, but do any of you out there remember the Weekly Reader? Oh yeah, raise your hand there, gray-haired people, yes. So the Weekly Reader was a weekly newsletter that we read in school, and it was written at that level that you were in class, so 3rd grade, 4th grade, and so on. And you could look in that Weekly Reader, a little handout, and then at the back you could order books. And so my mom was always a soft touch for books. We never had much money when I was growing up in school, going to school, but my mom would buy me books. And so I went home and talked my mom into buying me this book on tornadoes. And here I was, 7-year-old boy, reading this book on tornadoes, cover to cover, how fast they move, how big they can get, how you take cover, and what kind of damages they cause. So I learned a lot about tornadoes, and you can imagine, of course, the imagination of a little 7-year-old boy. So now let's fast forward 15 years later. I was actually in pre-med, living in Marion, Illinois, studying to become a doctor, actually. It was Memorial Day weekend. And it was unseasonably warm. What's that tell you? Unseasonably warm Memorial Day weekend, right? So I was actually, what do pre-med students do? I was studying on a Saturday. And my wife had just finished cleaning the house, and we took our dog out outside. And we heard sirens go off in our community, and it kept going and going and going. A beautiful sunshiny day. And I looked out over the side, and I saw this little this row of black clouds on the horizon and a little tail coming out of that black cloud. I thought, oh my God. I'm seeing a tornado for the first time in my life. And my mind actually flashed back to that little book when I had read when I was 7 years old. And so the first thing I thought is, well, number one, I have to take cover, right? So I ran back in the house. My wife and I ran back in. I pulled a kitchen table out of our kitchen and into the center of the house because I didn't have a basement. That book had told me, in the basement or in the center of the house. So I put my wife underneath the kitchen table with her puppy. And I ran back outside to see if my neighbors were home because I knew that they had a basement and basements were better than being inside the house. How did I know that? The book, right? And so then I knocked on my neighbor's door, and they weren't home. It was a beautiful Memorial Day weekend. They were out enjoying the weekend. And for a moment I thought, should I kick in the door? Well, you don't do that because you don't think it's going to happen to you. And so I didn't. I ran back across the street. And as I was running back across the street, actually, if you could pull that slide back up for me, there you can see the brick schoolhouse that I saw 6 blocks away. And the top of that 3rd-story brick schoolhouse being taken apart by the tornado now, stopping and agitating on that, and the red bricks flying up into the sky and raining down on both sides. And then I looked over at my single-story wooden structure, and I thought, I've got to get out of here. So there was my first decision to take cover, my second decision to actually go knock on my neighbor's door, and my third decision to try to save my life was to run back in the house and grab my wife, and we actually got in the car. By the way, I'd never had really good cars, so it was a junker car, and you can imagine my anxiety putting in the key. Come on, baby, start this time, right? And actually, I drove 3 blocks down the road and then turned at a right angle, very sharp right angle away. How did I know that I could do that? Number one, the average speed of tornadoes is about 30 miles per hour. I could see that one was moving relatively slowly when I first saw it. Number two is tornadoes do not turn at a right angle. They do not turn due right. They don't turn due left. They go in an angle mostly west to east. So I knew if I turned at a right angle, I could actually get away from this tornado, and that's what I did and saved my life and saved my wife's life. And it's a good thing I did because this is the before picture of our home, and this was the after picture. So you can see actually that I really had very small chance of survival had I taken even the first 2 decisions that I made to save my own life. And so there I stood there in that rubble and looking across there, and I saw my younger brother who was gone at the time, and my younger brother thought I was dead. He was gone. We didn't even see each other. And I looked over at him, and I saw him, and I grabbed him and hugged him. And, I had 3 lessons from that day that I want to share with you. And number 1 is, if you don't have your family, you don't have anything. And that's what that hug meant to me. I learned that as 20 years old, 20-year-old man, a boy. And then number 2 is, if you don't have your health, you don't have nothing, right? We were healthy, we were uninjured, we were young. Wow, big difference. I almost looked at everything that it was possessions of mine with disdain by that period of time. And then the third thing that I remembered, a weekly reader saved my life. A children's book. A $1 to $2 children's book actually saved my life and saved my wife's life. And now today, I like to think it's saved more people's lives. Because I spent a career later on, actually years later, I became an emergency physician, and then I became a disaster medicine specialist at Emory University, and then I worked for CDC as a public health scientist for a 20-year career, going all over the world, saving lives and helping people decide what to do in disasters. I was the incident manager for CDC during the anthrax emergencies as well as the World Trade Center. And I still continue to learn hold that one thing close to me. It's up to you to be prepared. It's up to you to prevent. You have to be responsible for what's going to happen after that event, but in order to do so, you have to prepare and prevent and protect before the event occurs. Before the event occurs. And so my career in CDC and studying this very closely, I came down to one conclusion: location, location, location. Nearly all disaster deaths are preventable. If you are in the wrong place at the wrong time, you will die. But if you're in the right place at the right time, you'll survive. That's what I did, right? What you would call what I did is shelter in place. Or actually, I did shelter in place first, then population protection measures of evacuation, right? Protection, prevention, and preparedness in that sense. So what am I talking about here? Well, those of you in emergency management, sometimes I don't get this message through so much in public health and other sectors and sociologists and so on. But you as emergency managers know this is disaster risk reduction, is it not? It's mitigation. It's prevention, right? What we're doing is preventing injuries from ever occurring, not coming in with my CDC cape afterwards and flying in saying, oh, I'm here to help things. Well, great, Doc. 90% of those people died an hour ago. So finally, I want to point out those early successes as well. This has already been happening. For the past 30 years now, tornado deaths are continuing to drop across the country. Is this a result of more medical care, better nurses, better doctors, better ER? No, it's not. It's a result of better warning, Doppler radar that can watch these storms better, and also our cell phones and our televisions that tell us how to take cover, and better education. So I want you to join me. I want you to join me in telling people about this responsibility that we have to prevent, to protect, and prepare. And I want to also thank you as well for the job that you're doing out there in doing this. You in emergency management are truly saving more lives than anyone else in any other sector. And I want you to take that home and remember that tonight when you fall asleep. And finally, I want you to go forth and plant the seeds, because those seeds are not difficult to plant. Sometimes all it takes is a little book in the hands of a little boy. Thank you.